Usually stories begin with how, long ago, one quiet day, the king of demons appeared and created terrible chaos in the human world. But this did not last long because, as usual, after some time an unknown hero appeared with his magnificent weapons and entered the battle as if he had been waiting for this all his life. Immediately after the hero in shining armor appeared, he, as usual, entered into with the Lord of Evil, and they met in the final competition, the hero with the demon king in the flesh. The result of this battle, as always, was very cliched, because the hero, having sacrificed himself, defeated the demon king and saved the whole world from his atrocities, and the demon king descended underground and fell into sleep. But even though the demon king suffered a crushing defeat, and before he fell asleep, he promised to return, he would put it all here. You have heard this beginning 1,000 times. After this, peace reigned in the world, and legends began to be made about the hero. The author is unknown. This overrated story about the demon king continues to repeat itself forever and ever. But many years later, after that same cycle, with the next reaping of the demon king from the hero in shining armor, the following happened. We were transported to a dark abode. Next, we watch some strange monster who is the henchman of the demon king. He informs his majesty that something terrible has happened. Next, the frame moves to the demon king himself, who was defeated by the hero who appeared. His condition is very deplorable in appearance. He asks his servant what happened. The henchman of this majestic demon king continues to say that Demiurge 666 awakened, but after his awakening, the demon king number 666 immediately left the kingdom. The servant continued to tell his lord that his son, before he ran away, announced that he was leaving the post of the demon king, the powerful demon king. After listening to this, did not understand what kind of nonsense this was. The demonic servant continued to try to continue the narration of something terrible that happened. He shouted that there was one more nuance, but he was afraid of the gigachad in front of him and was afraid to continue. Further, this demonic servant still finds strength in himself and shows his master a letter from his son, in which this son writes that he has escaped, and his search will be unsuccessful. This is exactly how our today's story begins. The course of events breaks off and we continue. When we are transported to the real world, we watch some person who is calmly walking. A rather tall man and quite fashionably dressed stops in front of the castle and realizes that in front of him is possibly the Arcoma castle of the Kingdom of Verde. He is interested in this. It turns out that before us is the next demon lord who escaped from the demonic kingdom. He confuses and understands that it really is a very pleasant place to be in the human world. This demonic lord continues to joyfully stroll through the streets. He realizes that being in the outside world is indeed much better than being downstairs with the demonic luzzers. But suddenly the guy stops abruptly. Apparently he came across something in this previously wonderful world for him that he obviously didn't like very much because he looked at something like a predator. The goal of his gaze was the cross that towered at the top of this castle. The demonic lord liked everything in this outside world except for this damned cross that was an eyesore. But after a couple of moments, the guy continued to enjoy the outside world, but his pleasures were again interrupted by some guards who, turning to him like a hillbilly, asked where he was from. But these two guards who continued to approach the guy looked more like hillbillies. They asked him if he had decided to walk around the kingdom doing nothing. The guy was in slight shock. Standing opposite these guards, the guy pretended that they didn't exist at all, but he just calmly looked at his outfit and wondered if it was because of his clothes, because everything was okay with his face. But these annoying guards continued to get to the bottom of our main character. They asked him how he dared to hang around the Arcom castle. They added asking if he had completely lost his fear. After these guards realized that our main character was not listening to them, but was simply continuing his mewing, they pointed their halberd at him and notified him that they were talking to him. They continued to attack the demon lord standing in front of him in human form. They demanded that he introduce himself. But the guy understood that he would have problems if he said that he was Demiurge, 666th. Besides the fact that this guy was literally a demon lord who escaped from the demonic realm, he also had 666 IQ, which is why he decided that if he said a few letters, it would pass for a name. Putting his hands in his pocket and looking at the guards, he greeted the people and said that they could just call him Durog. He believed that he had gotten out of it as coolly as possible. But suddenly another knight approaches this bunch, who is clearly higher in level than these two. He asks the guy how he dares to distort the name of the ancient god, whether he has forgotten where he is. Before us is Count Bruo. Along with his squad of fighters, he tells the guy that if he made a mistake out of ignorance, then for the first time he will forgive him, but he needs to get out of here immediately. But this guy continued to maintain incredible indifference to these little people. He only asked Count Bruo whether their Kingdom of Verde was really strong. He said all this with a smile. But when he heard this question from a simple-looking hillbilly, Count Bruo was simply terribly offended. But before doing anything, he asked the guy what he meant. The situation between the two was heating up, and the guy's composure was maintained. He directly asked them if they had enough power points from Raid Shadow Legends to consider him a king. This stupid speech of the hillbilly infuriated Count Bruo. He pointed his sword and asked the oaf how dare he insult the royal family. He loudly told him that now he would pay for it with his life. However, despite the fact that Count Bruo himself, standing in front of our main character, directly shouted to him that he was about to die, he only looked straight at his face and used some skill. A couple of moments after, the Demon Lord himself simply looked at Count Bruo, his head just like a watermelon shattered into small juicy pieces. The guy continued to look at all this with a smile. One of the two guards who were the very first to approach our main character looked stunned as the head of their Count Bruo shattered into small pieces. They could not believe their eyes. But a couple of moments after this guard's head also began to immediately inflate from the incredible pressure inside his empty skull. The explosion of his head was inevitable.
A couple of moments later, we watched as Sigma silently and with a smile on his face watched as the heads of the guards in front of him exploded one after another. He did not put 1% of his strength into this.
While our main character, with a happy face, whistled a cover of the opening JoJo as if nothing had happened, all the other soldiers could not believe that their allies had just suddenly scattered. After a couple of moments, our main character was not going to just stand AFK. He continued his brutal reprisals against the guards and began using another of his demonic spells. Immediately after our main character used his second demonic spell, a number of opponents standing in front of him simultaneously lost their ridiculous heads from their shoulders. Meanwhile, on the walls of the castle, which were very nearby, a huge number of archers came out and immediately opened fire with a hail of arrows directly at our main character. But judging by the reaction of the Demon Lord to these arrows, he clearly didn't care, because he just stood and motionless watched as a whole rain of arrows was approaching him. But the guy wasn't going to just stand there and watch as these ridiculous archers continued to shoot arrows at him. The guy's eyes once again lit up, and he looked at the rays from above. As soon as our main character simply laid his eyes on the heads of these klutzes, they immediately exploded under high pressure, and a bloody fountain came from the place where the head had previously been. But the deeds of our main character did not end there. After a whole crowd of dead people formed in front of him, he whispered an order for them all to immediately rise from the dead. A couple of moments after our main character ordered this bunch of soldiers to rise up, they immediately rose up head down into the sky 2 meters and stood in a T-pose. The guy ordered them to greet the new king. Immediately after this order, the demonic lord continued telling the dead bodies to praise the beginnings of their new lord with their bloody footprints, and glorify the return of this body with rivers of tears. Meanwhile, all the guards who were in this castle began to immediately run out of it. Everyone was ordered to gather immediately because the uninvited guest was breaking through further and further. After this huge army of various knights ran out of the city in order to stop our main character, they abruptly stopped because they were afraid of the spectacle in front of them. They all stopped in front of the main entrance to the inner part of the castle. They stood with weapons at the ready and silently watched as this door was slowly opened by our main character. But this Giga-Chad was too cool to simply open this door. It was for this reason that he simply mercilessly walked through the door, thereby destroying it into small pieces. As the guy continued to break into the interior of the castle, he demanded that the desperate cries of these losers merge into the sound of a fanfare. He continued to use his demonic powers. A couple of moments after this, we understand that this speech of our protagonist was not just a pretentious introduction. It was a spell that formed the dark energy of the dead. After this dark energy of the dead gathered behind our main character, he immediately sent it to the army that stood in front of him. This wave demolished literally everything that was in its path. In addition to the fact that this dark wave sent by the Dark Lord inside the castle caused incredible damage, it also had a mental effect on the soldiers, causing them to go crazy. A couple of seconds after the actions of this destructive attack by our main character, the entire army that stood to stop him turned into human mincemeat and made his way. The guy's face at that moment looked as if he had just watched a cute TikTok movie about kittens with equally cute music, because his face was breaking into a smile from what he saw in front of him. But after a couple of moments, something happened that made this guy distracted and open his eyes. Some man began to read a prayer that the Father, the creator of the world, was their God. This strange warrior who appeared to deal with the demonic lord continued to say his prayer. He tried to gain strength thanks to the holy energy. This typical protagonist continued to bow his head down. He asked the Lord to lead him now through the trials of darkness to the bright light of the truth. May victory be with him, he said. A couple of moments later, he asked to overcome death and make the truth prevail. With this prayer, he pulled out an enchanted sword from his chest and asked the Lord to grant him the strength to crush evil. After this sacred warrior took out his sword, imbued with divine energy from his chest, he extended it in front of him and demanded strength from the Lord in order to win. Judging by the reaction of our main character, this epic introduction did not impress him that much. But he was slightly surprised when he saw the light of the aura. He wondered if this was the same blood that he had heard about. The warrior answered the guy by saying that he doesn't know who he is, but he uses dark magic, and he also can't believe that he was able to break through the guards of Arkoma Castle on his own. This sacred warrior, getting into a fighting stance, tried to convince our main character that he would never be able to get through it, because God's blessing was with him. A couple of moments after making his speech, he jumped high and said that despite the fact that he may not be a purebred, he has enough strength to win. Immediately after the sacred warrior said this, he dealt a crushing blow directly to our main character. The consequences of this blow were so great that we saw nothing. But a couple of moments after the smoke from the sacred blow developed, the voice of our main character was heard, who told the guy that his blow was nothing special. The holy warrior at that moment was incredibly surprised, because this demonic offspring easily stopped his blow with one of his hands. Demiurge asked this warrior if it was his turn. Immediately after our main character asked this from the sacred warrior, he also began to read a prayer, even if it was unexpectedly that he turned to the Lord if he really is in heaven. The prayer of Demiurge 6666 continued with the fact that he asked the Lord in his prayer to give him the strength to finish off this idiot in front of him. The holy warrior was dumbfounded by this situation. Having finished his prayer, our main character told his rival that he also prayed, so now they will find out who the God who sits in heaven will listen to and help. A couple of moments after this remark, our main character made an incredibly fast but no less powerful attack that made a huge hole in the guy's torso right through the armor. Next, Demiurge turned to his defeated enemy and told him, looking at him as a victim, to never mention the name of the Lord to him again. The guy was incredibly ferocious. After this remark from our main character, the sacred warrior who had just received a mortal wound looked at Demiurge and simply could not believe what had just happened. However, our main character did not want to drag out this battle with this pathetic fanatic. In the next moment, Demiurge tightly squeezed the heart torn out from his opponent in his hands. Meanwhile, our main character is not going to stop. He continues his movement and reaches the throne room itself, where the king himself is now located along with his army. The guy greets all those who stand in front of him in the throne room and asks them if they have been waiting. The knights are in complete shock. They don't believe that the guy came here all alone. We understand that this insignificant castle has the last line of defense left, so they need to defend their positions at the cost of their own lives. In the meantime, His Majesty asked the guy who he was. In response to this, Demiurge, as if nothing had happened, continued to move towards the king of this kingdom. Approaching him, he assumed that the king was in front of him. At first, he invited him to just talk. In response to the rudeness of our main character, who continued to move towards the king, the knights protected him, asking him how he dares to be so rude to His Majesty when there are guards around him. Our main character, being a demon lord, did not even answer anything to this ultra-smaller one in front of him. Instead of answering, he simply snapped his fingers to summon another demonic spell. Meanwhile, Demiurge 666 continued to confidently move towards the king, and after the guy's click, two dark figures fell on the knights, causing them incredibly huge damage, and the heads of the front ones exploded. After our main character once again decided on the heads of the two soldiers who stood in front, he decided to ask the others if there were still those who were dissatisfied. After these seemingly elite soldiers guarding the king himself saw how easily the guy killed two soldiers, they realized that they were in a very difficult situation. But our main character was not going to stop there. At that moment, huge red wings grew from his back, and he soared into the air, taking a position on top of the soldiers guarded by the king. However, instead of dealing with these boobies, after Demiurge soared into the air, he went at increased speed to the king sitting on the throne in order to talk with him. After a couple of moments, our main one flies to this loser and stands in front of him like a real giga-chad. The old king of this castle is simply horrified. He falls from his throne and asks the guy what he wants. To save his miserable life, this old man shouts that he can give him money and power and everything else he can ask for, but judging by the guy's look, he doesn't care about these offers. After a couple of moments, Demiurge 666 looks down at this oaf and tells him that all the proposals he voiced do not interest him. Then he tells this old man to give him his kingdom. Looking at the king, we can see the terrible grimace that he made in response to the order of our main character. He shouted to him that it was impossible to transfer the kingdom just like his Roblox account. The guy didn't care at all, scratching his ear. He said that if he doesn't want to give him the kingdom, he will kill. His family will die. The kingdom will become his through an aggressive takeover. A couple of seconds after this, the face of this crazy old man became even more terrible than that of the monster. He shouted to our main Hepris that he needed his daughter. Now everything fell into place and everything is clear to him. But judging by the face of our main character, this information from the old man was clearly incorrect. Moreover, this guy, having heard about his daughter, had no idea that he really had a daughter. In response to this, Starkey continued to scream, releasing saliva into the air. He began to beg the guy to forget about it, because April is the pride of the continent, the flower of the royal family, and so on. But even after this speech, our main character answered with maximum indifference that this girl does not interest him. He needs his entire royal family because he is Ryan Gosling and not some kind of oaf. After hearing this crazy old man never ceased to amaze us with his crazy grimaces. He shouted and asked this guy how he could crave something that didn't even belong to him. These words spoken by this neurotic old man were clearly unnecessary because our main character became serious for a second and asked the old man if he really said right now that everything belongs to him. Despite the unexpected seriousness of our main character, this old man continued his cries, saying that the kingdom belongs only to the royal family, the head of which is only him. The level of testosterone and seriousness of our main character grew exponentially. He asked this old man, "Since when did this entire kingdom belong to him?" Demiurge 666 continued telling the old man, "Maybe he will also say that the whole world belongs to him because he also stole someone's power, and there is no damn royal family, and he is just a crazy old man." The guy continued his speech to the king, saying that he had simply been sitting on the throne for several decades, but now everything will change because it was his turn. The old man continued to deny everything. This madman continued to show us various crazy grimaces. He asked our main character if he really thought that the saints would approve of such an unexpected change of power. This king was clearly mistaken when he mentioned some saints at the moment, when he was sitting in front of the demon lord himself in the human incarnation. Because Demiurge, having heard about the saints, laughed as loudly as possible at the old man. This time our main character decided not to hold back at all. He spread his demonic wings and released his impulse with which he destroyed everything that was around him. A couple of moments after we watch what is happening, we see that after the explosion organized by our main character, only ruins remained from this huge area of the castle. Moreover, absolutely everyone who was in this castle, including the king himself and his guards and subordinates, turned into something that could hardly resemble a living person. After Demiurge 666 remained unharmed after this explosion, he looked at the king who was in front of him and realized that this old man, judging by his remains, did not even have blood. He justified his conclusion by the fact that if this old man did not have at least a little holy blood like holy warriors, he would have lasted at least a couple of seconds longer as a result of boredom. A couple of moments later, the guy, as if nothing had happened, looked into the heavens and shouted, turning to God, that he was disappointed in him, because the people who worshipped him and drew strength from him could not do anything. It is not clear what exactly our main character was waiting for while looking into the heavens through a crevice in the castle ceiling, but he continued to look. Perhaps he was waiting for the answer of God himself to his remark. But after our main character waited a minute and heard only silence in response, he realized that the awakening of the pure blood that was being discussed apparently still needed to wait. Then the guy, continuing to walk with his huge demonic wings and hands in his pockets, realized that there were about 20 years left until the day of his true awakening of demonic powers. Suddenly, the monologue of our main character is abruptly interrupted. His monologue was interrupted by some sharp scream from behind. Demiurge, puzzled, turns back to find out what's going on. As soon as our main character turned around to see who was screaming, he saw the very daughter of the king whom he had just killed, and for whose mercy this king so furiously asked. This girl, with hot tears in her eyes and blushing, shouts to our main character who he is and what he is doing here. At this time, judging by the guy's face, he is a little interested in her. While the guy is immersed in philosophical thoughts in order to answer the girl who he is, this course of events is interrupted, and we are preparing to get another portion of the plot. We will talk about the losers in the first war against the demon heroes, who were the first to be sent into a long sleep in the demonic kingdom. In the background, we watched a hand sticking out like a Terminator in the film. The demons who lost the first war against the holy heroes descended into the underworld with the broken soul of the king, and they all worked together to transfer the soul of their king into a new body. For a whole century, they nourished the broken soul of the demonic king with all kinds of spells they possessed in order to somehow save it and give a chance for the rebirth of their ruler. They all had one hope, the hope of the resurrection of their demon lord so that they would have a new demon king, and then after some time it was time for the second war between the demons and the heroes. Looking at the new demon king, his minions believed that there was no hero left, so the lands of the outer world would finally fall into the hands of the demon king and his demonic minions. But their hopes were rudely dashed because, unfortunately, when the time came for the second war, their expectations that there were no more heroes were destroyed because at that moment a new hero appeared. The appearance of a new hero led to another repetition of the cycle, because the new demonic king and his minions again suffered a crushing defeat. They again lost in this war. However, the demons who were minions of the main demon king did not despair. Immediately after the defeat, the scenario repeated itself, and they again began the process of resurrecting their king. However, all these attempts to win victory in this war again ended in another failure, because as soon as they ventured into the outside world, another hero in shining armor appeared there again. This endless cycle with the same outcome continued over and over again. We were transported a whole 100 years forward and watched another demon king who was ready to participate in the war again. But after they once again appeared in the outer lands with the aim of capturing, another hero appeared whose goal was to stop them and send the loser demon king down. This endless cycle and the same outcome when the demonic king lost to the hero lasted as many as 665 times. All this lasted for as long as 66,580 years. Time after time, everything went according to the script. The story of a hero who comes to save the whole world from the king of demons and his minions is not new at all. In careless times, people believed that one day a hero would appear and save everyone. But he is transported into the very depths of the earth, into the underground demonic kingdom. In this kingdom, all the inhabitants believed that the new hero would definitely be the last. They continued to resurrect the king of demons. This time, the demons resurrected our main character, who was the demonic lord number 666. He was to become their new king. They begged him to appear and show them the way. This is exactly how the resurrection of our main character, Demiurge 666, happened. On this ill-fated day for people, a new demonic lord appeared who was supposed to lose once again. After the appearance of our main character, the curse of the entire human race opened its eyes to see our main character on the very day of his resurrection. They hoped that this would be the end. However, instead of becoming a demon lord like the other 665 predecessors, our main character left a letter saying that he renounced the post of demon king and left. At this point, the course of events ends and we are transported back to our main character in real time. The king's daughter asks the guy what he did to her father. She calls him a villain. However, our main character only looks puzzledly at this strange girl who came to him herself. He asks only one question. What is the matter with this strange girl? But after a couple of moments, our main character remembers how the king whom he had recently killed shouted that his daughter April was the pride of the entire continent, as well as the flower of the royal family. After the guy used his excellent memory, he looked at this girl who ran up to him and told her that she must be the same Princess April that the old man was yelling about. The guy continued saying that when her father and the king of this kingdom died in one person, it was finally time to take his daughter and take his throne and kingdom. After Princess April heard the terrifying intentions of our main character, she continued to cry furiously and ask in surprise what the guy meant by this. But after a couple of moments, instead of answering in the manner already familiar to us without further ado, our main character simply begins to use his demonic skills to do what he wants. As soon as Demiurge made this seemingly rather simple gesture, something changes inside this girl, and judging by her eyes, her body completely loses the soul that she possessed just a second ago. A couple of moments after our protagonist's spell works, as always, the girl sits down on one knee and reports that from now on, her worthless body belongs to the Demiurge. After the guy is convinced that his skill works perfectly as always, he again soars into the skies to close the distance to this girl, and the girl calls him Master. A couple of moments after this, our main character reaches this beauty, gently takes her by the chin and says that this is all quite wonderful, because now she is his first person at his disposal. But literally a second later, our main character is distracted from a rather interesting process and looks somewhere to the side telling someone to stop whining before he gouges out that someone's eyes. Looking to the side together with our main character, we see a demonic eye that has probably been watching our main character for a long time. It answers the guy that the reaction is quite expected. A couple of moments later, the real Michael Jackson emerges from this demonic purple eye. He adjusts his hat and appears before us in full growth. After this demon with long white hair comes out of the purple portal, he takes off his hat and tells the guy that he is his devoted servant named Alex. He is glad to welcome him. Taking a break from the interesting process, our main character asks Alex if he has been following him all this time. Alex replies that he upsets him because he never leaves him a single step. In response to what he heard, Demiurge replies that everything Alex said was bullshit and nothing more, because according to the guy, Alex serves his father, not him. Judging by his face, he is dissatisfied. Alex, bowing before our main character, continues his speech saying that this body was passed on by the ancestors, which means that now the master of Alex's servant is our main character. Demiurge continues his arrogant attitude towards this Alex. He tells him that he didn't care about all this and asks him to get out, because he is not going to return to the kingdom under any circumstances. Unexpectedly, the demonic servant responds to our main character, in response to his intention not to return, that it is his right. The guy hearing this is suddenly surprised because he thought that they wanted to return him. Alex, starting to smile, continues to say that the guy shouldn't worry, because his main task is to carry out the orders of the Lord. He told the guy to just continue to do his own thing. Hearing this, our main character makes his eyes glow and looks at his new demonic servant and asks what other things he needs to continue doing right now. Pointing his hand at the princess, Alex asked Demiurge if he was planning to give this woman his powerful dumbbell right now in order to continue his legacy. Suddenly, in the hand of the demonic servant Alice, a glass filled with wine appears right out of thin air. He says that it has been serving him and the past demonic lords faithfully for 80 years. Alex continues, filled with positive energy, asking the guy if he would like to hear about his unfortunate sacrifice, because he had to change his own body in order to perform feeding. This servant of our protagonist did not lie in a single word, he said. This guy actually fed our protagonist by changing his body. It is a little strange, although it is very strange. Moreover, thanks to his own approach to teaching, he became an exemplary teacher. Demiurge replied that he perfectly remembers how this teacher, in quotes, beat the crap out of him. Alex continued saying that he was the only demon who surrounded our main character. Before diving into the egg to awaken, the guy answers the idiot that he himself put it there, and put it there by force. Alex continued saying that it was as if just yesterday this baby was nearby. He can't believe that now he's already interested in women. He can't even imagine how Alex is overwhelmed with emotions now. Next, our main character still interrupted Alex, telling him to stop talking nonsense. He is not interested in the title of King of Demons, and from that day on, he is an ordinary, unremarkable person living his own life. However, Alex's reaction even to this was surprisingly restrained. He answered our main character that everything would be the same as he wished, regardless of the content of the order. Alex smiled. Demiurge, in turn, immediately realized that something was wrong. He began to squeeze Alex with his strength, asking this asshole what he was up to. He asked him why he was so indifferent. Alex laughed. But after a couple of moments, Alex asked for forgiveness and said that he would tell everything. Alex asked his master why he chose this country. Demiurge asked him why he was asking. Alex continued his reasoning, suggesting that the matter may be in the country's wealth, and all because of personal dissatisfaction. Because there are various reasons, Alex said all this with a serious face. After thinking a little, our main character replied that he did not have a specific reason. Everything is much simpler. He just decided to become a king in the human world, so he didn't think much about anything else. A couple of moments after our main character voiced his answer, his faithful servant Alex suddenly began to clap loudly. This clearly raised a bunch of questions from our main character standing next to him. Continuing to clap, Alex said that his motives are worthy of a demon king, because as soon as he arrived on Earth, he immediately captured the entire kingdom and killed the king without any effort. In addition to the fact that our main character easily killed the king and captured the kingdoms, he also took his beautiful daughter April into his possession. This is a real villainy worthy of a demon king. Alex continued saying that neither an ordinary person nor even a high-ranking demon like him would have thought of such a thing. He called our main character a born demon king because of these facts. Our main character could not disagree with this because what is true is true. Alex continued saying that since the Great Lord says that he is leaving the demon kingdom, then nothing can be done about it. Alex continued saying that in this case, all he can do is take the son of our main character and raise him to be a real demon king. This proposal raised many questions from Demiurge. However, despite the very strange speech that appeared from nowhere, the guy continued saying that after he raises our main character from his son on this day in 20 years, our main character's son will become the new demon king, and he will make him come down to earth and destroy everything around. We watch this moment in the imagination of this Alex. Alex presented all these events in too much detail. Even our main character, who stood opposite his servant, heard all these fantasies. was very surprised. He even had nothing to answer for some time. But after a couple of moments, our main character turned back to Princess April, most likely using IQ 666. He understood why Alex was talking about his son and other plans. A couple of moments after our main character took a closer look at the face of this Princess April, it finally dawned on him what his demonic servant Alex was up to. He was surprised. Then our main character exhaled. He realized that he almost fell into the trap of fatherhood. A little more and he became a father at the age of 18. It's somehow too early. Alex was very dissatisfied with this situation. Immediately after our main character realized that his supposedly faithful servant had almost directed him to make the greatest mistake of his youth, he turned to him, looking at him with the gaze of a predator. After the faithful servant Alex caught this terrifying look of our main character on his own skin, he immediately realized that right now he would have problems that Demiurge would create for him. Alex was quite quick-witted because immediately after he realized that problems awaited him, our main character fired a powerful projectile of demonic energy at him and told him to shut up. The beam that our main character sent was simply inadequately strong, and its destructive power crossed all boundaries. Perhaps if this guy had aimed it at the bedrock, he would have easily broken it. The faithful servant of our main character, Alex, miraculously escaped from this powerful beam, but looking at this attack and holding his hat, he understood that if he had been hit, he would have lost his body. After the most powerful beam of our main character reached a certain point, a huge explosion was heard. The epicenter of the explosion was located far from the place where our main character was. The scale was amazing. In an attempt to restrain his anger, our main character could barely restrain himself. He asked the servant Alex if they really decided to set him up like that by making him a father. He called all of them idiots. Looking from under his hat at our main character, Alex understood that the guy was different from the others. His demonic field was still growing, and he was already quite strong. He was certainly different from his ancestors. Then hope appeared in the head of this servant, because maybe this time the demons would still be able to motivate them in this war of thousands, because with Demiurge they had a chance. After a couple of moments, our main character sharply addresses his servant. He says that someone is right and the king really stands out too much. Alex was surprised that he was addressed so sharply. Continuing to address his servant, our main character continued saying that now they are focusing on the hero. Turning to Demiurge, Alex, very surprised, asked the guy again. Meanwhile, our main character continued his speech. A little embarrassed from anticipation, he was going to focus on the hero's henchman. Alex continued to understand nothing standing behind. Demiurge continued saying that he will be close to the hero, so he will receive due recognition. But he will not stand out too much. No one will suspect that the hero's henchman is the Demon King. Our main character was going to quietly row success behind the hero's back. While the hero is working, he will enjoy the rays of glory. Alex asked how he will be the hero's assistant if there is no hero without the king of demons. However, this time our main character didn't give a damn about Alex's words. He took off again with the help of his wings and told him that they were flying in search of a hero. Alex continued to not understand anything. Running after our main character, Alex asked our main character, what about the princess? The guy answered the servant to deal with her himself. All this time, someone was watching these two with the help of a ball. A couple of moments later, we watch as someone addressing someone as my lord tells him that it seems that the new demonic king was born somehow differently. His origin is similar, and he does not shine with intelligence. This mysterious person continued to say that he still needs the power of our protagonist. Then he thanked Demiurge for his very timely appearance in the human world. A couple of moments after this strange girl finished this speech, she expressed that she intends to borrow the powers of our main character for a while. She is sure that Demiurge will forgive her. While that girl was sure that everything was fine because everything was going according to the script, the course of events was interrupted and transferred to the street. We were watching some kind of horse and our main character singing. After a couple of moments, we see that while Alex is the driver of the wagon, our main character is resting in the wagon along with the hay. He continues to sing about the search for a hero because he wants to enjoy the glory. Some time passes and the singing of our main character is interrupted. Alex asks the demonic king who has left his post why they need a carriage if they can just fly, because it's quite inconvenient. In response to this, our main character asks Alex if he is completely stupid, because if they fly this way, they will show everyone that they are demons and not ordinary tough guy travelers. This time Alex quite deftly countered by pointing his index finger at the burnt palace. He said that the one who burned the palace was telling him this, but the guy replied that it was just fire. Alex is just a servant of our protagonist, so he is forced to agree with his king. He proceeds to ask the guy if he really wants to sleep as the hero's henchman. Our main character answered that this is so. For this it is not necessary to have special blood, he just wants to enjoy life, and let him deal with the monsters himself while he is resting. In response to this, Alex told the guy that even if he becomes the hero's henchman, it will not be so easy to get to the top at this rate, because it is a very thorny and difficult road. Demiurge continues saying that here the previous Demon King is one of the great 7 of the Demon Kingdom, so what is there to worry about? The hero can easily deal with the dragon. Alex thought that the guy completely wants to become a human. Our main character sharply answered his servant with a question. For some reason he should give up his abilities. He added that it was because of their intelligence that they lost the battle 665 times. But after a couple of moments, our main character got hooked on the part of the conversation about ranks. Merry Friend asked his servant if there was a rank system among the heroes. Alex replied that there was one, and what else? Our main character, having an IQ of 666, immediately guessed whether we were talking about A and B ranks and something like that. Alex replied that he guessed correctly, and the reality is really similar to this. Alex continued the explanation by saying that first they go to the D rank hero, otherwise they are called dragon slayers. The distinctive feature of these heroes is that they are able to slay a dragon alone. Our main character was clearly interested after he heard about this rank. He asked his faithful servant if he could get this title only if he killed the dragon with his own hands. Alex replied that this is not so, because now dragons are neutral towards people and demons, and the attack of dragons on villages remains somewhere far away in some fairy tales that are told to children. Meanwhile, the faithful servant continued saying that the next rank of heroes is G rank, or Giant Killer. From the name it is immediately clear that we are talking about heroes who are able to defeat giants. Alex continues by saying that immediately after the rank of Giant Killer, there is a class of L rank, that is, Lich Killer. This means that heroes of this rank have enough power to defeat a lich. Alex continues saying that further the ranks of the heroes simply go in alphabetical order. Demiurge asks his servant why the others have such boring names. Alex replies that he has no idea. Now we finally move on to the rank of F-rank heroes. Such heroes are usually simply called losers. If they were fruits, they would be the most rotten ones. They would simply be made into jam. As the two continue to ride on the cart, Alex continues to say that the higher the rank, the more support from the nobility. One can even take the most important post in the country. Spoons are not only neglected. These F-rank losers are simply hated by everyone around them. Absolutely everyone who is somehow connected with them hopes that they will simply disappear quickly. The human world is very merciless towards the weak. But the story of the faithful servant of our protagonist does not end there. Turning to Demiurge, he continues that saying, "In the world of people, there is something more important than the ranks that heroes have." Even our main character knows what we are talking about, because he continues his servant's proposal by saying that the most important thing is blood, because the purer the hero's blood, the stronger he is in all respects. The first saviors of the world 580 years ago were the well-known heroes and priestess, their children and the children of their children. It was they who gave rise to the generation of heroes, and from them this family continued, which fights the demon kings. It was they who continued the line of holy blood. Its quantity in families is carefully measured. The purer the blood in the family, the stronger the aura, the person who has the purest holy blood. It becomes heroes, and it is the person with the purest holy blood who then fights with the demon king and wins in any case. Everything has been exactly like this already as many as 665 times. If we evaluate purely by blood purity, those with the purest blood receive the highest ranks. There are exceptions, but usually the purity of blood is proportional to the strength of the hero who possesses it. After listening to this whole story about the essence of the heroes, Demiurge asks his servant what kind of nonsense this is. It's like being born with a golden spoon in his mouth. Because of this war, our main character is stuck in an egg for 80 years. However, our protagonist's faithful servant Alex continues to say that people are putting their lives and honor on the line in this battle for the holy blood, and the presence of holy blood is much more important than it might seem. But judging by the reaction of our main character behind him, he is not very interested in these details. He openly says that he absolutely does not care about all these conventions of the human world. Alex does not answer anything. However, our main character himself continues his speech by saying that in any case, in the end, there will be a battle again between the heroes and the demon king, who is our main character. Demiurge continues by saying that because of just one phrase, the confrontation has been going on for 60,000 years. Alex, being as serious as possible, replies that that was the promise. Continuing to move somewhere with the help of an old cart through picturesque places, our main character asks a logical question. Why can't he just live in peace, as calmly and measuredly as this cart moves? But after a couple of moments, our main character abruptly gets up from the hay and points to a white butterfly and asks Alex what it is and what kind of creature it is that can fly freely. While our main character continues to study this ordinary white butterfly, which is a discovery for him, Alex looks at him like a child and responds by saying that this is an ordinary butterfly. Our protagonist is very surprised after he hears that the creature in front of him is called a butterfly, but an unexpected wind interrupts our protagonist's curious exploration of the creature. Because of this unexpected sneaky flow of wind, this butterfly flies away somewhere. Our main character is drawn to it as in a scene of some cool movie where two people say goodbye, almost like in a Fast and Furious movie. After a couple of moments, the Demon Lord realizes that something has ruined his hairstyle, which he was styling. He immediately asks his servant what ruined his hairstyle. Alex replies that this phenomenon is called wind. The curious study of everything around by our main character continues. He already knows what the wind and butterflies are, but raising his head up into the sky, he wonders what is hovering above his head. Demiurge clearly has in mind the sun that is above his head. Covering his eyes with his hand, he tells his servant that his eyes are starting to hurt from this strange circle. Looking up, our protagonist's servant continued to act as a textbook on the environment. He replies to the Demon Lord that the thing he is asking about is an ordinary sun. The greedy exploration of everything around by our main character continues. He uses his sense of smell, catching some smell with his nose. He asks his servant what this sweet smell is. A walking encyclopedia in the form of a servant, Alex immediately answers our main character that the smell he is talking about is the smell of flowers that grow very close. Demiurge looks at the flowers with a puzzled look. Further, our main character understands that his faithful servant clearly knows much more than he does. He turns to Alex, asking him if he really lived a long life and saw a lot. Alex, somewhere in the distance, answers our main character that he is right. He adds that he was born after the first war of demons against the heroes. He was born at that time, like all 7 dukes of the demon world. After Demiurge hears his servant's answer, he asks him what in this case it turns out that he came here to the outside world every 100 years when the cycle of this war continued again. Without waiting for his servant's answer, our main character himself understands that this is so, he adds, saying that it was probably great, because the outside world is a truly amazing place. Our main character's servant, after he hears the Demon King talking about how this place is surprisingly questioning, turns back and looks at him, but he does it carefully. Meanwhile, Demiurge, continuing to admire the beauties of the outside world, continues to say that past Demon Kings must have never experienced what he is experiencing right now, looking at this beauty. Demiurge continues by saying that if everything had gone according to plan, which was repeated for tens of thousands of years, he would have continued to remain underground for about 20 whole years, and then he would have repeated the fate of past rulers. Looking at the heavens, our main character understood that if everything had gone according to the previous scenario, he would have already died at the hands of the hero who would have come to defend these lands. He understands that he was lucky when he managed to escape. Enjoying the wonderful, beautiful world around him, our main character, leaning on the carriage, understands that the position of the King of Demons should disappear altogether. He asked Alex if he did not agree with him. After our main character asks this rather difficult question to his servant Alex, who is a veteran of all the wars that happened between demons and heroes, he remains silent. But some time passes and no answer to Demiurge's question is heard from the high-ranking demon Alex. In response to this, our main character leans back into the hay and declares that in this case he will sleep. Laying down comfortably in the haystacks, our main character asks his servant Alex to be sure to wake him up when they finally get there, and if he sends him back to the world of demons, they will both die. In response to this, our main character's servant turns to look at our main character. He, without saying anything, turns back and says that he understood him. The path continues. At this point, the course of events is interrupted and we speed up in time. The course of events continues when we watch the wheels of the carriage finally stop. The servant of our protagonist reports that they have arrived. A couple of moments after this, Alex, as promised to his master, turns to Demiurge and tells him that they are already there. Judging by the face of this guy, he clearly did not get enough sleep and would not mind getting some more sleep. Alex looks around and says that everything corresponds to the description. He adds that this place does not have very active trade and is quite quiet. Besides, life here is very measured. The village is called Zorix. Meanwhile, our main character, who slept almost the entire way here, continues his active attempts to fight sleep. In his sleepy voice, he wonders what kind of village Zorix is. Continuing to head towards the entrance to the village, Demiurge asks Alex what about the heroes. He is told that there are only 2 families in this village. One is an A-rank family that is close to G rank, the other is a loser family. Our main character, judging by his face, finally manages to wake up. He begins to look around the village. He notices, having examined everything around, that it seems that there are no D-rank families here. Demiurge continues to inspect everything around without leaving the carriage with the hay. The servant of our main character adds that if every town had a D rank, the army of demons would not even think about rising to the ground. Our main character asks his servant if D-rank heroes are really that strong. The servant named Alex immediately answers that this is so, and Demiurge, in turn, calls the demons in this case cowards. Suddenly, the attention of our main character is attracted by some random resident of this village. He hears that someone is talking about some rumor that a dragon has recently attacked some castle. The bearded man wonders how this could even happen. The dragon has not been caught yet. It is better not to approach the castle at all. Another man also heard that half of the castle burned down. The girl also participates in this conversation about the dragon attack on the castle. She wonders how this can happen. Because dragons died out many years ago, they concluded that the era of dragons is returning. After listening to this conversation, our main character immediately points his finger at this crowd and tells his servant Alex that he told him that dragons have long been neutral. Alex replies that it seemed so to him. Alex adds that the last time he was on the surface was 80 years ago, which means that during this time something could have changed a lot. The residents are in a hurry to notify the saints and the D-rank hero. Looking at the larger building, the servant of our hero tells his master that this is the best hotel in the area. He invites him to stay here. The guy is clearly dissatisfied with this hotel, but there is no choice. However, our main character continues the conversation with his servant Alex. He demands that he call him exclusively master. Alex asks again. Demiurge asks him if he didn't understand the first time. But instead of continuing the argument and explanation, our main character orders his servant to go into the hotel and pay for their room. A moment later, Alex is doing this. The employee greets the visitor. Being a handsome guy, Alex takes off his hat in front of the worker and tells the worker that they need a penthouse because his master is very selective and he needs only the best living conditions. In his heart, this old man calls these two rednecks for their outfits, but in reality, he laughs loudly and tells these two that they should not be aware. But penthouses are a very expensive entertainment. Hearing this a couple of moments after this, Alex opens in front of this ignoramus a whole box full of treasures if you didn't understand. These are the treasures that these two brought from the Acroma castle. Immediately after this worker sees a huge amount of treasure in front of him, he turns to him in anger and, addressing him as an asshole, asks him why he is escorting the guests. This ridiculous hotel employee who was shouted at by the old man at the reception is in such a hurry that he falls terribly awkwardly under the continuation of insults from his boss. The employee asks for forgiveness for this. This poor worker's boss continues to yell at him, telling him to quickly escort the new guests to their room. The guy standing in front of Alex and Mariuger greets them and bows. Despite the fact that due to the fall this guy's nose began to bleed, he introduces himself by the name Zeke Muden, saying that they can just call him Zeke. He declares that he will take the luggage and calls the two to follow him. Next, this guy begins to drag the box of these two on his hump. Getting up, he explains to the guests that now, due to the attack on the castle, it's quite noisy around, because who would have thought that a dragon would appear? This worker Zeke continues to rise with a huge box. He tells Alex that they shouldn't worry about it, because in their village there is an A-rank family, and they will deal with it if something happens. The course of events accelerates a little, and we continue when Zeke opens the doors to Alex and our main character. He greets them and informs them that in front of them is a penthouse, which is the pride of the hotel. Continuing to drag the box inside, he says that, to be honest, this is the first time he has dealt with such noble people. He doesn't know if he can please, but he will try and they can contact him at any time. A couple of moments later, our main character unexpectedly turns to Zeke. He asks Zeke's employee if he has blood. He takes Alex and Zeke himself by surprise with this question. The guy is taken by surprise. He pretends that he doesn't understand what he's talking about, but our main character has already realized that this guy seems different compared to the rest of the people in this village. Demiurge continues saying that Zeke has blood flowing in him, and in such a terrible form he concludes that Zeke is from the kingdom of the family. He must have several generations of scum behind him. Our main character continues this rather uncomfortable conversation for Zeke. He asks him directly how pure his blood is. The guy holding the box of these two doesn't even know what to answer. But after a couple of moments, Zeke still gathers the strength to awkwardly scratch his head and answer that he is only rank F, which means that it is even difficult to call him heroes or something like that. A couple of moments after what Zeke said, the roof of the luxurious room that these two had just rented explodes from a huge stream of flame that came out of nowhere. Zeke falls to the ground. However, our main character and his faithful servant Alex continue to remain calm, while Zeke, hiding behind his hand, looks at the creature that destroyed half of the penthouse. A couple of moments after we observed what these three saw, we saw in front of us a huge dragon whose appearance could scare any person to death. Just the unexpected appearance of this huge fiery dragon created real chaos in this small village, because everyone around them began to run away wherever they could in order to escape. There was an invasion of the dragon from the legends. Zeke continues to think that the two people in front of him are ordinary people. He shouts to them that they immediately need to run away from here as soon as possible to save themselves. After a couple of moments, our main character once again reminded his servant that he said that you shouldn't be afraid of dragons. Alex reminded the guy that he said that he was unsure. Zeke was shocked by these two. After a couple of moments, the two said that everything was fine, and he shouldn't worry about the dragon causing them any harm. Zeke was clearly shocked by what he heard, because he thought that they were ordinary people. Then something unexpected happens. Our main character, who calmed Zeke down, told him that he would become an assistant, and together they would ensure that he eventually ratted out the heroes. While Zeke was in shock, the guy continued to say that he came to this village to find the hero, so he thinks that all this is a trick of fate. He tells Zeke to accept his offer, and he will give him glory. Demiurge continued that he could give him not only fame, but also wealth that his ancestors never dreamed of. And the most important thing is that he will finally stop being a sucker in the eyes of people. Our main character continued his push by asking Zeke if he was going to live the rest of his days labeled as trash, or if he would follow him and change his fate once and for all. In Zeke's eyes at that moment there was only fear, because right now there was an invasion during which they could all die. Our main character continued telling Zeke that such a chance comes only once in a lifetime. Zeke remembers at this moment questions about what kind of blood does an F rank have? Why do they even give birth to children? Because they are a laughingstock anyway. Everyone thought that it would be great if they just died. Next, we watch Zeke and his older sister in his childhood. Absolutely all people hated them. Little Zig asked his older sister when their mom and dad would return, because he wants to eat. After returning to reality, the guy heard that he had a chance. He immediately fell at the feet of these two and begged them for help because he would really try. He swore that they would not regret it. Zeke was simply in terrible despair. Tears began to roll from his eyes. He continued to shout that if they wanted, he was even ready to give his soul in exchange for the help that he really needed. After our main character hears that this guy is ready to give his own soul in exchange for help, a devilish smile spreads on his face. He reports that they will just need his soul. Demiurge continues saying that in this case, their time has come and it's time for them to hunt this dragon who started the uprising. Zeke is simply shocked because they had to start with some goblins. After a couple of moments, our main character, with the help of his demonic powers, begins to perform something. Zeke raises his eyes in surprise, and Demiurge, in turn, offers to conclude a contract. A contract appears before us between Demiurge and Zek Muden. The Zek side undertakes to take our main character as a partner and obey him, and this will also last forever until Demiurge breaks the contract. The last 2 points contained the condition that all fame and wealth would be shared by Zeke to the extent that our main character wishes, and Zeke's side does not have the right to put forward disagreement and conditions. While Zeke, being not stupid, understands that the contract is very dishonest, our main character tells him to give his name if he agrees, because in this case all the conditions specified in the contract will come into force. Despite the fact that at first this guy did not agree to this contract, after a couple of moments he collects his reserves of testosterone and shouts that he is Zach Muden agrees to the terms of this contract. After the contract between these two is concluded, our protagonist points his finger at the dragon and announces that it is time for their debut. He orders his partner to slay the dragon. After a couple of moments, the faithful servant of our main character, Alex, still decides to intervene in the conversation, telling his master that it is not as easy for people to slay a dragon alone as he thinks. But our main character responds to his servant's remark that he knows this, but let his partner just pretend that he is killing him. But in fact, he and his servant will take care of the most important thing. Next, our main character's ingenious plan appears before us, at the beginning of which, first, Alex talks to the dragon in the language of pain, because in this situation the dragon will understand exactly what they want from him. Immediately after this conversation, you will need to push the horse forward. Jumping forward, he must begin to wave his sword in front of the falling dragon. As a result, everyone will think that he himself defeated this dragon. After our main character's plan works, everything will look like Zeke himself defeated the monster without anyone's help, and everyone around will be delighted, because the low shock will kill the angry dragon. Alex added by telling our main character that people would not believe that AF rank Loshok defeated a huge dragon, and he asked if they would stand out too much if he started following the hero everywhere. But instead of answering his faithful servant, our main character simply turned to his partner. Zeke asked the guy why he was looking at him so strangely, but the guy was silent. A couple of moments after this, our main character instantly jumped up to his partner of rank F, after which, with a deft movement of his hands and no less powerful, they pulled off his fake Gucci clothes. Immediately after our main character took this shameful cloth from his partner, he sharply reached out to where his gaze fell. He lifted an ordinary metal pan and took it. After the guy picked up this metal pan, holding it at arm's length, he began to drill 2 holes in it, just like Superman with his laser vision. Immediately after our main hero finished making this coolest thing in his opinion, in order to put it on his poor partner Demiurge, he did just that. Literally a moment later, we could see in front of us the legendary hero in a mask who had a pan with holes on his head and the coolest cloak behind him made from a work uniform. Demiurge explained that every hero must wear a cloak. He added that after his disguise, no one would notice him. On the contrary, everyone would simply be delighted with the sudden appearance of a mysterious hero. A couple of moments later, we watched as our main character's servant Alex was already ready to fight the dragon by killing it. Before leaving, he told his boss that he would take care of the dragon. After Alex left to kill the dragon, our main character turned to his partner to tell him to go and begin his operation to deceive the population. Meanwhile, the Bucket Man was very embarrassed. He directly asked our main character if he really had to fight the dragon all alone in such an outfit. After a couple of moments, it probably occurred to Demiurge that his faithful partner was left without a weapon, which he would very soon be waving in front of the dragon. His gaze was attracted by some kind of stick. Literally a moment later, our main character, using an accurate low kick, sent this something that drew his attention to his in panic. He told the guy to get ready to catch his sacred sword. This sacred sword that our main character sent to his partner was an ordinary broom. Despite the fact that it was just a broom, the Bucket Man's hands began to shake. After the Bucket Man received a weapon in his arsenal, our main character told him to just stand with a sword in his hands in front of the dragon, and if he succeeds, he will receive the fame and wealth he dreamed of. When we looked at this guy in a raincoat and a saucepan on his head, we learned that right now Zeke was visited by a strange feeling that he still couldn't understand, but we didn't have time now. But after a couple of moments, this guy suddenly grabbed the broom that our main character threw to him. It felt like this guy was going to destroy everything that was in his way. Then this guy turned into a real berserker. At this moment, Guts himself would envy him, because this guy right now was attacked by a frantic desire to succeed in this matter. There was only one logical explanation for this. Heroic inclinations had awakened in this guy's blood right now, namely the hero's blood that was circulating inside his veins. It was the hero's blood that right now longed to tear the Demon King standing in front of him into small pieces, but our main character, standing in front of him, only laughed evilly. But no one understood the guy himself. Having come to his senses, the guy shouted that his master inspired him with confidence, which means that now he will definitely succeed, and he will finally receive the fame and wealth that he so badly craved. A couple of moments after this guy was fired up with a desire to get everything in an instant, he ran towards the dragon. Our main character, standing behind him, shouted, motivating him. Meanwhile, the course of events moves to the epicenter of the city where real chaos is happening. All people continue to run in panic from this dragon in the hope of somehow saving themselves from this horror. But after a few moments, the humble servant of our main character appears on the stage and emerges from the purple demonic eye we are accustomed to. He is located right on the cross. Immediately after Alex gets comfortable, he looks at his target in the form of a fiery, furious dragon. This dragon also makes eye contact with this S-rank demon. Then we finally watch as Alex finally reveals all his powerful spells to us. Many demonic arms begin to grow from his back. It looks terrifying. After our protagonist's servant Alex uses his entire arsenal, he rises into the air to close the distance to this powerful fire dragon. Having sufficiently closed the distance to this powerful fire dragon, this guy takes out his demonic claws in order to perform a whole host of attacks with just one blow. A couple of moments later, Alex, following his plan, makes a whole series of attacks in one instant. But the target of all his attacks was a rather durable dragon scale, which did not receive much damage in response. However, the purpose of the blows of our main character's servant Alex was not to break through the scales of this powerful dragon. He was going to get inside it and came out, and we watched the golden heart of the dragon. After a huge number of hands of this demon reached the golden heart of the dragon, they began to embrace this dragon in a tight embrace, after which they began to squeeze it intensely. A couple of moments later, this servant of our main character, finding himself on top of this dragon, told him that he had received his heart, so from now on he must obey him, and he is his new master. But before proceeding with the plan that our main character came up with, this demon asked the dragon for what reason he came here, because the dragons had come to an agreement with the people. After Alex asked a question, he did not hear an answer, although he should have. After a couple of seconds, something unexpected happened. Some strange organisms began to crawl out of the scales of this dragon. Alex didn't understand what the hell was happening to this dragon. These strange alien-like organisms were crawling out of this dragon, and the dragon itself, overcome by their will, spoke in a strange dialect. Hearing the ancient name, Alex wondered how the dragon knew this dirty language. He understands that it was not the dragon that violated the agreement with the people. Something clearly went wrong. A couple of moments after Alex concludes that there is something wrong with this dragon, he suddenly breaks free and begins to fly rapidly upward, gaining enormous height above the city. Going down, we see a brave hero with a saucepan on his head and a great cloak who is armed with an equally great weapon. He is patiently waiting to fight the great dragon. But after a couple of moments, Zeke realizes that something is wrong here. Because according to the plan of his partner, or our main character, the dragon should have already been defeated, and he should have already played the scene. A couple of moments later, a family looked at this brave hero with a saucepan on his head from the window. They were very surprised because they didn't understand why this eccentric was standing on the street and not hiding. As planned, the excitement around this guy with a broom and a saucepan on his head began to rise very quickly. They didn't understand whether this guy was going to fight back the dragon alone. Was it really a hero, they thought? But after a couple of moments, the enthusiastic comments from the residents around gave way to condemnations because he looked like an abnormal person, and the guy, in response to this, tried to close his ears so as not to hear it. A couple of moments later, this guy drew attention to his partner who was shouting to the masked hero to save them all. The guy at that moment just wanted to go home and play Fortnite. As soon as our main character called this eccentric a hero, the entire social population picked it up and began to support him as a real hero of the Giga Chad. But he continued to feel awkward. A couple of moments after this guy gained confidence, he squeezed the broom tighter in his hand and remembered that such a chance comes once in a lifetime. Now the most important thing is not to miss it. The guy continued to fill himself with motivation. He continued to think that if he managed to pull off this plan, then he would be guaranteed to have the fame that he had craved for so long and wealth. At this point, the course of events stops and we continue, when we begin to follow the enslaved dragon, which continues to rapidly fly in some direction. Its speed is comparable to a fighter. While the dragon continues to quickly head somewhere, Alex understands that defeating this dragon will not be as easy as he expected. But he has no other choice because there is nothing he can do about it. Immediately after this, numerous attacks by our protagonist's faithful servant with the help of his many arms continue on this dragon to continue the execution of the original plan. After a couple of moments, Alex still manages to carry out a successful attack with the help of his hundreds of demonic hands. After they reach the dragon, he uses the demonic technique of shackles. This demonic technique, with the help of Alex's demonic hands, works perfectly because it immobilizes this multi-ton dragon. Alex understands that there is just a little more left, and victory will be in his pocket. Meanwhile, his demonic hands continue to penetrate deeper and deeper into the wounds of this dragon. After they once again reach the heart, he uses the heart-piercing skill. After Alex finally pierces the heart of this enslaved dragon, with the help of his techniques, he screams in pain. A huge amount of fire continues to come out of his mouth along with the scream. A couple of moments later, after Alex pierces the dragon's heart, many purple alien one-eyed organisms crawl out of the dragon's wound and cover Alex's hand. While these strange extraterrestrial organisms continue to cover the hand of our protagonist's servant, suddenly his attention falls on the dragon, which abruptly decides to speak to him. It doesn't seem like it to Alex at all, because this huge dragon finally begins to speak. He declares to the servant of our main character that he definitely saw that the one who was considered dead came back to life. Our main character's servant is very puzzled by this dragon's remark. Meanwhile, these headcrabs continue to attack Alex's head in order to enslave him, or worse. While these strange extraterrestrial organisms capable of enslaving the will continue to fill the face of a high-ranking demon, he at this time reflects on what really happened to the dragon. Meanwhile, the course of events shifts to our main character, who at this moment is sitting on the ground waiting and looking at the dragon. He wonders why his servant is fiddling around for so long, because the crowd is waiting. Due to the fact that his servant Alex takes so long to deal with the dragon, he has absolutely nothing to do, which is why he picks his nose and thinks about whether the dragon is really so difficult to kill. After this almost defeated dragon, being bound by demonic hands, is finally freed from enslavement by extraterrestrial beings, he finally comes to his senses, because the aliens are busy with Alex. But not even a couple of seconds pass after the dragon comes to his senses, and he begins to rapidly fall down straight into the city, which is mired in chaos due to the invasion of himself. Most likely, our main character saw this and for this reason decided to turn to his partner, the hero with a sparkling helmet in the shape of a saucepan. He called him over, calling him a loser, and he turned around. After Zeke responded to the call of his partner, our main character, pointing his finger up, told him to get ready for the scene because the dragon had already been defeated and was flying down. The guy's thoughts at this moment are only that he should start swinging the mop correctly when his time comes so that everyone will think that he defeated the dragon and stopped its invasion. Next we watch the dragon itself, which is completely crazy, and moves straight into the ground face down. A rather frightening sight when you see it above your head, most likely. After Zeke sees this extremely unpleasant sight, he decides to doubt their joint plan, which is why he turns to Mr. Demiurge. The guy looks at him questioningly. After the guy is sure that our main character can hear him, he tells Mr. Demiurge that he doesn't want to die yet. He continues to watch the rapid fall of the dragon. But in response to this extremely convincing explanation, our main character looks at his partner and tells him that he promises him with his own honor that he will not die for anything now. After Zeke, being a hero in shining armor, or rather in a saucepan, hears the words that he will never die, he is again visited by his incredible determination. However, this is not only determination. The hero's genome and the holy blood that was constantly circulating somewhere in his depths are awakening again in order to give him the strength to accomplish feats. Inspired and gaining confidence, the guy again tightly grips the broom. He is confident that he will succeed. Getting into a fighting stance, he is going to use the moonlight of the first chapter. Moving back to the dragon, which is rapidly decreasing in height, we continue to watch the battle of the faithful servant of our main character with these extraterrestrial creatures who are not far behind. While these head crabs from Half-Life 2 continue to greedily eat Alex's face, he does not panic at all. For some reason, he begins to laugh. Perhaps he also realized that this is a reference. But after a couple of moments, his laughter stops because these extraterrestrial beings continue to enslave the will of the servant of our main character. His demonic hands spread in all directions. Something strange happens. An extraterrestrial creature seizes the control of several demonic hands of Alex. A real battle begins between hundreds of demonic hands, and Alex continues to resist. At this moment, Alex still admits that he is starting to have some small problems, because this creature continues to absorb him, and thereby enslave his will to his own body. A couple of moments after this, Alex barely continues to resist this alien. He suddenly looks down and realizes that there are only moments left before they collide with the ground, along with the dragon. Next, Alex continues his battle for his own mind. With the last of his strength, he casts his spell of hundreds of demonic hands in order to finally end this matter. After the servant of our main character manages to seize power over his demonic hands, he uses them to perform 1,000 light strikes on these alien creatures. If we were playing chess, this would certainly be a brilliant move, because with this action, Alex managed to inflict a huge amount of damage on this alien creature. Immediately after Alex managed to weaken this strange creature, he reached for his face and then began to tear this head crab away from his face with all his might, using a lot of effort. Being below, our main character continues to watch how the huge carcass of the dragon is slowly but surely going downwards, slowly approaching them downwards with every second. Having carried out the fastest possible analysis with the help of demonic critical thinking, Demiurge understands that he needs to slow down a little. Otherwise, all that will be left of their hero is a cake, and the plan will fail. Moving back to the dragon's carcass, we continue to observe how the battle between Alex and the alien miracle has shifted in Alex's favor, because a little more and he will be able to get rid of this Velcro. Residents continue to look out of the windows in surprise and shout that there is a dragon outside, and a little more and it will land down. They are going to run away as soon as possible so that they have a chance to survive. A brave or not so brave hero in a cape and a saucepan on his head, after hearing the screams of the inhabitants around, clearly loses his grip because the powerful sword in his hands begins to shake. However, Zeke continues to play the role of a valiant hero. Meanwhile, there are literally a few seconds left before the dragon collides with the ground because he is already very close. A couple of moments after this, our main character appears on stage, gets up from his seat, and abruptly turns to his humble servant Alex to continue the plan. He is surprised by such a huge speed of the fall of the huge dragon carcass, which is why he asks Alex what the hell he is doing. He shouts to him that he needs to slow down the fall of Bitcoin and the dragon. But after a couple of moments, our main character looks closely at the dragon's carcass and at his servant, and realizes that something is clearly wrong here, and Alex is not to blame for this. After all, Alex, being on the dragon's carcass, continues his fierce battle with an extraterrestrial creature that is capable of enslaving the victim's mind. He continues to try to snatch this idiot from his face. Zeke, who is standing in the main square of the village, continues to think that everything is going according to plan, which is why he takes a supposedly defensive stance in order to meet this huge dragon. This guy continued to squeeze the broom harder and harder in his hands until a huge multi-ton dragon approached him. No matter what happened, he was not going to budge. Moreover, this guy's testosterone reserves had increased so much at this moment that he was seriously going to finish off this dragon with just one blow. At this moment, the course of events stops because we are transported to the past, or rather to Zeke's childhood. He remembers how someone once taught him something. He was asked to look carefully. Next, we watch Zeke himself, who, with the baby behind him, was carefully watching. At that moment, he was shown the very moonlight technique that he was going to repeat. The man continued saying that this martial art was passed down from their family from generation to generation, so he must learn it before another demon king invades their world. In response to this, little Zeke informs his father that the children in the yard tell him that their family will never, ever defeat the Daam king who will arrive. His father briefly replies that this is not so. The father continues by saying that no matter what anyone says, the sacred heroic blood flows in them, which means that Zeke will become a great hero who will be able to defeat the new demon king and his minions. The little boy was very surprised by what he heard from his father, but he continued to hold the sword tightly. His father only told him that he needed to study much harder to make it all come true. But after a couple of moments, the uncertain expression disappeared from the face of this little boy, because it was replaced by a joyful smile of the boy. He answered his father that he would study hard. At this point, this guy's memories smoothly blur and we are transported to the present. He looks at the dragon in front of him and prepares to seriously defeat him despite the plan. A couple of moments after the guy has gathered his strength, he swings the broom very hard back and loudly shouts out the moonlight technique of the first chapter, which he learned from his father. The dragon continues to fall, Alex continues to fight the extraterrestrial creature, and our main character, realizing that everything is not going according to plan and he needs to intervene, loudly shouts a spell called Fatal Execution. But besides our main character, Zeke also uses a powerful spell. He performs a very powerful punch and shouts the Demon King separation technique while performing a powerful punch in front of him. Literally one more moment and we see the result of a powerful blow from our main character and his partner Zeke. After the blow, a huge veil of strange blue smoke hung in front of him. A strange blue liquid continues to pour out onto everything around, and a huge dragon that was supposed to destroy the entire village with its landing lands relatively neatly to the side. The entire face of the hero, on whom all the honors of those around him should have been showered, was stained from head to toe with that country's blue liquid that spilled everywhere after the joint blow from these two. But after the brave hero in a cape and a shining saucepan opened his eyes and screamed loudly, having examined himself and what was in front of him, it is unclear whether he was dissatisfied with his appearance or pleased with what was in front of him. After a couple of moments, this guy decides to turn around in order to look around. Looking around, he sees only a huge spot of blue and the complete absence of a dragon in his field of vision. Immediately after this, the guy in the metal pan on his head hears that someone from the outside calls him a hero. He looks puzzled in the direction where the voice came from to understand who it was. Turning around in front of the guy, a beautiful picture opens up. Absolutely all the residents of this village looked out of their windows in order to shower our main character with praise and honors, calling him a hero. While the residents continue to call this ridiculous-looking guy the real savior of the village from the invasion of a huge dragon, the guy is completely lost and very embarrassed because this was unfamiliar to him. Continuing to look around, this guy in a saucepan on his head sees among the people around and our main character who attracts attention by coughing. He promised him that he would survive. Meanwhile, Demiurge 666 shouts to this guy who won the title of hero to change his clothes and hide as quickly as possible. He addresses him as a masked hero so as not to ruin the plan. Seeing our main character, this guy is incredibly embarrassed, and after thinking a little to understand what to do, he answers the King of Demons that he will do it right now. While this joyful guy is walking towards our main character who called him, he is jumping for joy. At this time, someone is watching him from a height. We only see his leg. Further, we understand that this serving person was a faithful servant of our main character, who was very badly beaten by this alien organism. A part of it still remained on his eye, and we do not know what happened to him. Alex continues to stand silently and watch what is happening below from a bird's eye view. But after a couple of moments, he decides to look somewhere to the side. Something must have attracted his demonic attention. This something was the same dragon that actually landed but caused the minimum possible damage. At this moment, he lies, and it is not clear whether he died completely or still survived. Continuing to look at this dead dragon, which no longer has pupils in its eyes, Alex remembers the words of this dragon that the one who was considered dead came back to life, and something strange happened. This is where the course of events ends. A lot happened in one day, but in the meantime, we speed up and move to the next day. We see our main character who slept well. A couple of moments later, his servant appears in the elite apartment of our protagonist, asking him if he is awake. He brings him a cup and offers him to start his day with a sip of this drink. Alex continues to lay out various things for breakfast, telling our main character that he heard that people start their day with a cup of coffee from Starbucks. Demiurge is surprised to hear this. But after a couple of moments, an educational moment for our main character is interrupted by the unexpected appearance of Zeke, who informs our main character that they have problems. Looking at this guy, we see how he is a little shabby, but nevertheless very happy. The news or problem is that the family has already gone out in search of the masked hero who stopped the dragon invasion. This guy continues to say that the people of the village want to make him their hero. But suddenly Demiurge asks his partner what's wrong with his outfit. The guy looks at his clothes in surprise. Zeke awkwardly scratches his head and replies that because of yesterday, the entire village was destroyed, so he helped the residents restore order, for the reason that the residents pay well for such work and money. Meanwhile, listening to his partner, who in fact is a slave, Demiurge takes a cup of coffee from the tray and, before drinking it, informs his partner that everything is going according to their plan. After a couple of moments, the terribly curious main character in the theme of the world around us looks at the bright sun, calling it the bright motivating rays of the sun, which, together with cool morning coffee, is simply garbage. The Demiurge, delighted with the outer worlds, continues to say that it is great to awaken on the surface. Alex tells the guy that this coffee is made from the tongue and eyeball of a dragon. He is glad that he liked it. Meanwhile, looking at the typical streets of the village, we observe how workers and ordinary residents are intensively engaged in the restoration of their village. They talk about what needs to be done faster and more hands are needed. Despite the fact that just yesterday the lives of these residents were under threat, they continue to work hard to put their village in order as soon as possible. No one shirks and everyone gets on with the job. A couple of moments later, we see Zeke himself getting involved in public works, who with a satisfied face carries on his back a huge amount of debris that was left behind by the dragon. Meanwhile, our main character is watching this entire restoration process and notices that all these residents are working hard to restore this provincial village. However, our main character watches this not alone, but together with his humble servant Alex. Demiurge notices that Zeke is also working tirelessly to restore the village. After a couple of moments, Alex tells Demiurge that Zeke told him yesterday that he has been doing strange work since childhood. Moreover, he was born in a poor family and is always trying to earn money. Looking at this guy who works hard for the benefit of the village, Alex continues to say that this guy was constantly doing laundry, cleaning, digging graves. It's easier to name what he hasn't done yet. Alex's story about this guy does not end. He continues saying that this guy even worked part-time in a provincial bar. Demiurge listens to the servant, but judging by his look, he is thinking about something. After a couple of moments, our main character interrupts his servant and, out of the blue, says that now everything is decided. Alex looks questioningly at the guy so that he explains to him what he is talking about. Looking at this village, which is being actively renovated by the residents themselves, the guy explains to his servant that he has already decided that they have already found a hero to carry out the plan, and besides, he is too lazy to travel around the area. That is why our main character continues to use IQ 666 and tells his servant that in this case they will settle in this village. It is small and inconspicuous. So he likes and is satisfied with everything. Looking at the beauties that are revealed to the Demiurge, he continues to say that it is in this village that his human life will begin, which he so eagerly longed to get in this outside world. Joy overwhelms our hero. He gets up from his place and tells his servant that they need to go while Zeke is working. The surprised Alex asks the guy where they are going. Turning around, the guy replies that they obviously need to sell dragon skin because it is used to make equipment, so it is quite expensive, and one of their goals is to get to the top. But despite the brilliant plan of our main character, his faithful servant is forced to destroy it. He informs his master that the Bureau of Heroes took everything yesterday. Demiurge is shocked. He asks Alex again what he said. Alex continues saying that the corpse of a dragon is a very serious thing, so ordinary people cannot take it. The guy is just wildly angry. He cannot believe that they just killed this dragon. This guy becomes much more serious and points to his servant and says in a scary voice that they need to go. Even the high-ranking demon Alex is afraid of him and asks where they will go. Continuing to make the strangest faces possible, our main character answers his faithful servant that they are right now heading to the hero's bureau, which took the dragon's corpse in order to destroy everything like that. This answer from Mr. Demiurge 666 makes Alex's servant very nervous. He shouts after his master that this is not a solution. He continues to try to stop his master. Alex continues saying that the bureau is the base of all the heroes. Despite the fact that our main character is very strong, he cannot just go against all the heroes, because if they find out that the Demon King has escaped, they will be finished. Alex continues the conversation by asking his master if he was going to take the side of the heroes a couple of minutes ago, but this question does not cause any contradictions in Demiurge. Alex continues to explain to his master as clearly as possible that in the human world you must first register with the bureau. And if there is no bureau, then Zeke, who is going to become a hero, simply will not be able to do this. Judging by the face of the Demon King, these boring explanations of his faithful servant clearly tired him. He turned to Alex and looked at him with the most exhausted look from boredom. However, Demiurge was not going to give up. He connected his demonic thinking and began to think that right now he had just stopped the destruction of the entire demonic race with his deliberation. But after a couple of moments, our main character apparently comes to another idea in his head. He tells Alex that in this case they will go to another place. The surprised servant asks where. Demiurge 666, turning to his servant, makes the most devilish appearance, saying that they can compensate for the losses at the expense of the neighboring country. Upon hearing this, his faithful servant is very surprised. The surprise of our protagonist's servant is due to the fact that he thought that he was seriously going to become a man in the outside world. But the guy deftly counters that he can become a man tomorrow. But for now, they have work to do. Servant Alex wonders why, in that case, they don't just return to their underground kingdom. But despite this thought, the two are transferred back to the cart to head to the neighboring country. Continuing his slow but confident movement on the cart, his faithful servant Alex calls him, calling him master in order to say or ask something. But in response, he hears only silence. But despite the silence, he continues to call him until he has to yell loudly at the guy. Demiurge wakes up from his dream where he was playing Fortnite and asks his servant what the hell he wants. Alex says that Demiurge has already thoroughly enjoyed the human world. He asks if the time has come to return to the underworld because the entire kingdom is waiting for him, and only 20 years are left until the fateful day. The servant continues saying that he shouldn't waste time because he must learn demonic arts, but Demiurge replies that he doesn't care. He's not going to do anything just because that's what they want in the kingdom. Alex remembers that one day the Demon King should appear and attack the world. Alex continues saying that this is already so common that no one would have thought that this would not happen. 665 kings before him took it for granted. Demiurge at this time, continuing to enjoy his vacation, answers with the question that if everything was so easy, then why is God needed? He tells Alex to just accept it, because there is no longer any Demon King. Alex turns sharply to Demiurge and shouts at him to have a child from anyone so that he can raise the 666th king. Demiurge immediately refuses, asking his servant if he knows how old he is. Alex continued saying that no matter what happens, he does not intend to return to the underworld without an heir, which is why he will wait for this as long as necessary. Demiurge continues to think about raising his rank in the League of Legends and enjoying other pleasures of the outside world. He answers Alex that, in this case, he will have to wait and serve him for eternity. Suddenly an idea comes to Alex's head. He asks our main character what he thinks about him looking for a wife for him. Demiurge warns the guy that if he talks about women again, he will destroy the underworld. The fact that our main character had an aversion to women could only be explained by the fact that he was going to become a professional League of Legends or Valorant player. Meanwhile, their journey continued. Suddenly, after a few minutes, our main character breaks the silence again and wonders if this can really work. Alex turns to his master and asks what he is talking about. Next, our main character begins to get embarrassed. He takes his gaze away from his servant somewhere to the side and reports that he is talking about the very princess whom he enslaved. Alex is trying to understand and remember which princess we are talking about. Meanwhile, our main character continues to be very embarrassed because the topic of women is still closed to him and is very difficult. But after a couple of moments, Alex finally realizes what his master is asking him about. But at first, he doesn't even believe his ears and imitates the PogChamp emoticon for a while. But the guy still gathers his strength to say that we are talking about pregnancy. He asks Alex whether people can really get pregnant from a demon like him. After a couple of moments, our main character receives an instant response from his servant. It is positive. Scenes immediately appear in Demiurge's head of him playing different games with girls. Alex continues his explanation by telling his master that in this regard there are practically no differences between humans and demons. He continues his story by saying that usually men, they accumulate their vital fluid, and then the exchange process occurs during the game of Valorant. And after the cell of the small Sigma reaches the Fight Club, a child appears. A couple of moments after hearing this, Demiurge raises his hand and tells his servant that he doesn't care much about sex education, so he doesn't want to hear anything about it. So Alex falls silent. But Alex continues telling our main character that if he really wants it badly, then he can put his strong Tyler Durden Jr. into the woman's body. Hearing this, Demiurge is very surprised. With a smile on his face, the servant of our protagonist continues that in this way this process will lead to pregnancy with a probability of 99%. And with a passionate kiss, the chance is 50%, and an ordinary light kiss is 25%. Our main character's face changes its expression greatly after he hears that a woman can become pregnant from a demon if the demon just decides to kiss her lightly, because this is truly amazing. In response to this, his humble servant Alex shows him class and adds that it's enough for him to simply hold hands with a woman. In response to this, the surprise of our main character increases even more. After hearing a volume of amazing information, our main character falls into a haystack, amazed at what an amazing body he has because he really needs to be more careful with women. Next, the guy realizes that he almost got into serious problems in alimony. He also understands that his demonic body was literally created to leave behind offspring. The guy continues to think about his body and the essence of his existence. He understands that everything comes to the point that he just needs to kill and give birth to children. The more he learns, the less he likes it. But Alex corrects our main character by saying that he has a blessed body, because he is literally all the hope and salvation of the entire race and kingdom of demons that is below. However, our main character, having heard this, does not take it seriously. He adds, saying that a body like his appears every 100 years with the same task 665 times already. Looking into the beautiful sky, the guy continues saying that he doesn't like the fact that there are so many expectations from him from birth. Doesn't anyone really care about his opinion about what he wants to do? After a couple of moments, a very loud scream is heard from somewhere from the side. These two sharply turn towards the scream in order to understand what it is. Looking to the side, our main character, together with his humble servant, see one girl who is running away from just a huge crowd of men, whose running raises a cloud of dust. Taking a closer look, our main character and his servant see that this is not just some simple woman, but not men are chasing her, but a whole crowd of some strange goblins or orcs in order to tear her apart, or even worse. Tears keep welling up in the girl's eyes. She looks at the passing carriage in which our main character is in and begs them to help because she was attacked by a huge crowd of bandits. Alex turns to our main character and tells him that a beautiful lady is in trouble. He asks him if they will help her. The guy asks why this is all of a sudden. Alex replies that she might come in handy. But suddenly our main character interrupts his humble servant by asking him if this whole situation seems very suspicious to him. Alex asks his master what exactly seemed suspicious to him. Looking at this situation, Demiurge continues that in this situation, this girl simply suddenly appeared and ran to them begging for help, because this is simply the dumbest cliche that is encountered everywhere you are. While this girl continues to run to the carriage where our main character and his servant are, they continue to think about where they came from, because even the forest is far away. They continued to think calmly. Next, our main character asked his servant Alex if he really thought that they still hadn't noticed them, and continued to run after the girl who was running straight to the carriage. All this is strange. Our main character continues to use his demonic intellect. He asks his servant if he set this up by chance. Alex asks what he is talking about. The guy asks if he wants him to make a child. Alex turns to the guy in surprise and asks him who he takes him for, because he is the greatest strategist of the demon kingdom. He would never have done something as stupid as this. The guy continued to lie and rest as if nothing had happened, but his rest was interrupted after this girl who was fleeing from monsters suddenly ran up to him and leaned on the cart. Finding herself in front of our main character, she began to shed tears, calling Demiurge in front of her a hero. She screamed that these bandits were pursuing her. She begged him to help her get rid of them. In response to this, our main character, with an indifferent look, answered this girl who was begging for help that he was no hero at all. He was just the hero's assistant, so she turned to the wrong person. Hearing that the hero's assistant was in front of her, this girl only began to sob harder. She shouted to the hero's assistant to help her get rid of these bandits who had been chasing her for a long time. The guy replied that they were a high-ranking squad of dragon hunters, and not some gang that was butting heads with mountain bandits. The girl at that moment hid her face, wondering why he was so harmful. But Demiurge 666, thanks to his excellent hearing, heard that she called him harmful, pointing his finger at her. He told her that she was calling names. The sobbing girl replied that this was not so, and she was just asking for help. While happy that he had revealed the girl, Demiurge continued to accuse this girl, pointing his finger at her. He was interrupted by a huge axe that the bandits threw right next to him. After the guy saw a huge axe that almost hit him, he stopped mocking this girl and looked puzzled at this huge axe and remained silent. The monster at that moment continued to run onto the cart. They laughed at our main character. They told him to get away with his wreck if he didn't want to die. They also made fun of the rags that he was wearing. In response to this, the guy looked as unperturbed as possible and answered this group of mountain bandits that his cart was broken and he couldn't just leave. Then he turned to these bandits. Next, our main character simply looked at this crowd of bandits and said that they would burn in hell. With the help of his demonic power, he got rid of them literally in an instant, compressing them into one whole. Our main character did not immediately deal with this arrogant bandit. With the help of his demonic gaze, he set this oaf on fire with his hellish purple flame. He asked his henchmen to put it out. But this bunch of idiots who stood and did not know what to do continued to stand rooted to the spot. Our main character warned them that the flame that he directed at their leader could not be extinguished. Demiurge continued saying that no matter who they are, no matter what magic they use, this fire will not go anywhere, even if he himself does not die, but it will simply burn for eternity. He asked who wants to join. In response to this question from our protagonist, all the remaining mountain bandits saddled their horses as quickly as possible and went as far as possible from this damn demon to save their asses. After our main character saved this girl without much difficulty, he told her to get out too. But she asked him to stop. She told him that the temple from where she came had been captured by mountain bandits. This girl who was saved by the guy continued saying that one of the priests was captured and their relic was stolen. She asked our main character to help them recapture their temple, which was captured. In response to this, the guy began to pick his nose without hiding his indifference. He said that he had no desire to do these stupid quests. The girl, in response to this, squeezed the cart out of anger. Immediately after the guy immediately refused to help this girl in liberating the temple, he turned to his faithful and humble servant and ordered him to continue the route. But this girl once again prevented our main character from simply leaving. She sharply shouted to the two on the cart so that they would stop again and listen to her one last time. This girl said that Mary Rugg mentioned that they were dealing with dragons. She asked if they were assistants to that same hero by chance. Their temple is the top of the dragons and their god. If he helps drive away the bandits, they will pay. Judging by the next frame, our main character immediately agreed to complete this quest after he heard that as a reward for driving away the bandits, they would pay him with a golden helmet. Demiurge rose in an extremely strange way, because all this long way he was lifted by his faithful servant Alex on his back. Suddenly they stopped, and Alex suggested that they just fly to the top. However, our main character immediately replied that they would not be able to fly because he was not a demon king. In this case, Alex asked his master to climb on his back, otherwise his heels would fall off. But to this, Demiurge replied that this was beneath the dignity of a demon. Alex reminded him that he told him that he was not a king. Then we watched the incredibly sweaty face of our main character's servant. He was thinking about something suspicious. Next, the faithful and humble servant of our main character looked at the girl saved by his master, who for half an hour, as if nothing had happened, continues to climb the 1,000 steps. Alex's suspicions were aroused by the fact that this very steep mountain was easy for this ordinary-looking girl. She had already been ahead of him for half an hour, and not at all tired, continued to climb. Next, our main character told his faithful servant that he doesn't care at all who this girl is. He added that he doesn't know what she's up to. But if she lies, he'll destroy her just like the bandits. But after a couple of moments, our main character still looked at this girl and said that she was talking about the golden god of dragons. He was surprised after he heard that dragons also have their own god. However, his servant quickly corrected him by saying that this is not so. It is more like conquering demons. He explained that the golden dragon is just a dragon that stands at the head of all dragons. Get ready. The whole walking Wikipedia in the form of a servant of our main character again began to tell the history of this world. He said that demons, dragons, and people each have their own god, the creator of the world. In response to this, our main character looked mysteriously into the sky and wondered whether not only people have a god, but demons and dragons are just minor characters. Further, the servant of our main character continued to climb his master over these painful steps. He asked the master not to doubt, because in God there is truth and unconditional love. Alex continued to say, adding that if they capture Horson with the blessed light of God, then they will be able to lure the very deity who stands at the head of everything to their side, thereby becoming the main ones. In response to this rather strange explanation of his servant, our main character once again looked into the sky in search of God. He believed that this was a rather strange way to show love. Some time passes and we continue when Alex finally reaches his destination with Demiurge on his back. Having reached the right place, he immediately falls to the ground, left completely exhausted. When our main character got off his servant just like from public transport, he walked over his head, and before his first step on the ground after a long time, he called Alex a weakling. While poor Alex continued to lie on the ground, completely exhausted, Demiurge immediately began to head towards the temple in question. Alex hoped that his master would help him during the descent. Meanwhile, the course of events continues when our main character, together with his barely alive servant, opens the huge doors to the sacred temple, captured, according to the girl, by bandits. Opening the doors and activating his demonic eyes, he asks her where the promised mountain bandit and golden helmet are. He told her to post the information while he is good. Alex warned the gentleman that something is wrong. The demonic spider sense of our humble servant did not let him down, because a couple of moments after his warning, the door through which they entered began to close sharply and quickly. After the exit from this temple was closed for Demiurge and his servant Alex, that girl appeared in front of them, whom it turns out we already saw at the very beginning. They were supposed to get here according to her plan. While this girl on the golden dragon praised the flair of Alex's servant, our main character looked with a smile on his face and asked this girl if she had captured this temple. He also asked where the promised helmet was. Next, this girl looked down at these two boobies. She asked the guy how dare he ask this. She asked him if he still didn't understand what was really happening. Feeling like an edit, this girl demanded that Demiurge and his servant Alex immediately put their pathetic bodies on their knees, because right now in front of them is the goddess and ruler and the mother of all dragons. After our main character heard that right now in front of him was the very deity for all dragons, he was very surprised, because he had just recently chatted about this with his servant. His humble servant Alex, being even a high-ranking demon, warned his master standing behind that their affairs were bad, but judging by the guy's face, he didn't care and was ready for anything. The girl laughed loudly and asked them if they were surprised, because most likely, in her opinion, she managed to surpass all their worthless expectations about who the deity of dragons was. Turning to the demon king who was standing in front of her, she called him a stupid mortal and ordered him to start begging for mercy right now, while she was generous, and he had a chance to take advantage of it. But after a couple of moments, the surprise that was on our main character's face disappeared somewhere. He again had a calm expression on his face. He asked her if she really was who she said she was. The girl made it clear that this was so, and asked him if he now understood what situation he found himself in. She continued by saying that he must follow her order if he really wanted to survive. Suddenly, our main character decided to show maximum disrespect for the dragon deity who was in front of him. Because he began to look for treasures on his own nose, he asked the woman why she was mumbling there. The guy continued his provocative speech by telling the mother of dragons, or whatever her name was, that he also wanted a title as cool as hers. Having heard such an attitude, this woman was simply shocked by the impudence. Demiurge continued saying that he always felt that he was missing something. He asked Alex how he thought the title of the dark alpha male from the top was observed. Alex said that it was incredible and in his spirit. Meanwhile, the dragon deity, terribly offended by the behavior of these two, was already shaking with anger. She called these two to draw the attention of these idiots back to her. The anger that filled this woman with the title of dragon deity made the skin on her face turn red. She ordered these two to immediately stop talking some kind of incoherent nonsense. She continued to demand that the two of them beg for mercy from her as quickly as possible. In response to this, the Demon King looked at her and replied that he did not think that he had anything to apologize to her for. In response to this dragon goddess pointed her finger at our main character and asked if it was he who killed the dragon yesterday. He added that she was the mother of all dragons, and they killed her child yesterday. After Demiurge 666 heard the true reason why she lured them here with a smile on her face, he asked this goddess if it was because of this little thing that she laughed so much and caused so many problems. This remark from our main character completely infuriated the dragon goddess, which is why she got up from her throne and jumped up in order to close the distance to this impudent person. After a couple of moments, this woman, in the shortest possible time, literally in an instant, found herself right in front of the face of our main character. Looking into his eyes, she asked again whether he called the life of her child a trifle. When our main character was left alone with this goddess of dragons, they were surrounded by a huge circle of flame. She decided that the guy wanted to die because they were in her golden kingdom and allowed themselves too much. Then, looking into the eyes of this guy, she said that even if he were Demiurge, the demon king himself, he still would not have a single chance to cope with her in battle. The humble servant of our main character, standing aside, having heard about the Golden Kingdom, told his master that they were in the abode of the Golden Dragon. He held his hat from the shockwave. In response to this, the distraught dragon goddess laughed and told our main character that his servant was very smart. She ordered the 666th Demon King to kneel in front of her right now. A couple of moments later, something unexpected happened. Demiurge asked this goddess if she really continued to resist after she found out who he really was. She was surprised. Smiling widely and looking into her eyes, the white-haired man told her that if she was a golden dragon, then he could just twist her head. He told her to get ready because he would rip her skin off. After hearing this, the goddess of dragons standing in front of our main sin was very surprised, but the anger in her eyes was unquenchable. But even so, she was very puzzled. She asked him how dare he. This girl wanted to continue her pathetic speech of the dragon goddess, but after a couple of moments she was interrupted by the finger of our protagonist. He asked her to stop because there was one more thing to do before the fight. Looking into the eyes of this powerful dragon goddess and holding his finger in front of her with a hint of silence, our main character in all seriousness told her to immediately apologize for her lies. After this phrase from our main character, this dragon goddess, despite her power, was terribly surprised. She did not understand what this very strange and unusual guy was talking about. A couple of moments after this, the girl even stepped back a little from our main character in surprise. Meanwhile, the Demon King asked her to switch to cleanliness and stop blatantly lying to him. Putting his hands in his pocket, our main character began to explain that he did not come into this world to create chaos. He only wanted to become the hero's partner and continue to be one. Demiurge continued his story by saying that it was for this reason that he went to the village, but his little dragon himself staged an invasion and burned the entire village, so it is wrong to blame him. Standing in front of the dragon goddess, Game World 666 continued asking this girl what he could do in this case other than self-defense. He continued saying that she didn't even show up while her child was destroying the village. Demiurge continued the conversation in the language of facts. He told her that she was trying to deceive him by pretending to be a priest. Moreover, she really thought that she would crawl to her on her knees begging for mercy. Next, our main character asked this girl if she was really so sure that her dragon children could do whatever they wanted. In response to this, the girl narrowed her eyes and began to think. Out of nowhere, the faithful servant of our protagonist Alex intervenes in the conversation. He declares that his master is right. Moreover, one cannot think that everything is permitted only because of the presence of power. Standing against the backdrop of a bright flame, Alex continued that it is obvious that people will always fight for their safety. It was the dragons who forgot about the peace agreement. It is they who should ask for forgiveness. Our main character agreed with every word of his servant. He added by telling the girl that she did not even apologize to them. The girl at that moment was literally killed by the number of facts in her direction. After a couple of moments, our main character continued with a simply brilliant phrase about what they rightly say. The apple always doesn't fall far from the tree. The girl was embarrassed because she is not a mother of a dragon in the literal sense. In response to this, Alex asked this girl if she was trying to avoid responsibility for what she had done. He asked if she wanted to be a goddess, but not take on the obligations that she should take on. The two continued their group condemnation. Demiurge told this goddess that people often blame children for terrible behavior, but the parents are behind it. Parents like her don't care about their kids, so everyone is judged by their children. Alex joined the group condemnation of this goddess. He added to his master's words that one should not turn a blind eye to this, because she, being the mother of dragons, is obliged to apologize to the villagers. After a couple of moments, this mother of dragons realized that her plan had gone a little wrong. She began to awkwardly honor her head with her finger and directly said that something was wrong. She asked them why it was her fault. Meanwhile, these two effectively turned around and began to walk away from this temple. Demiurge asked her who else could be to blame. He ordered her to let them out of here. The girl asked them to stop. After our main character stopped, the girl approached him and told them that since they were here, maybe they would listen to what she had to say in her defense. In response to this, Demiurge fell silent expectantly. Our main character was serious, and his words, like any other Sigma, had weight. He said that he did not continue this conversation until she apologized to him for disturbing his peace. The girl sloppily tried to mumble something, but the guy interrupted her by saying that if she didn't want to, he would get over it, because her apologies meant nothing to him and had zero weight. Having said this cool phrase and presented cool music, our main character, together with his servant, began to head towards the exit again. But this annoying girl again hurried to stop them by shouting after them. Something unexpected happened after the Demon King and his faithful servant Alex turned to her. They saw that the dragon goddess had indeed apologized to them, bending to the floor. A couple of moments after this, our main character approached this girl and, putting his hand on her head, said that he was not entirely satisfied with her apology. But since she asked so, he would accept her apology. Judging by his face, he was pleased. At this moment, the powerful ruler and mother of all dragons felt as awkward as possible. She said that all this was as strange as possible, but Demiurge continued to stroke her and laugh at her. The girl continued to endure the antics of our main character. She whispered that she needed to remain patient. Meanwhile, our main character smiled widely and asked her what she wanted. After this mother of all dragons heard that our main character was ready to listen to her, she wanted to say it quickly, because, to put it simply, she just needs to catch the dragon, and that's the whole request. The face of our main character at that moment was indescribable. Approaching the girl, he clarified whether she, being the mother of all dragons, was asking him to catch and kill his child. She replied that this was so. The guy turned into Star Platinum and began to hit her with a flurry of blows, but jokingly, he asked her if she thought he was completely stupid because this was an obvious trap, so he would immediately deprive her of her head. The girl could not resist the barrage of attacks, but she replied that this was not the case at all. Alex intervened in the conversation, asking the goddess if this was all because of that purple parasite from which her children were suffering. Then the faithful servant of our protagonist continued by saying that inside the dragon sat a purple creature of extraterrestrial origin who seemed to have completely captured the dragon's mind, enslaving it. Removing the hands of our protagonist from herself with a light blow, she said that this was indeed the case and that someone was opposed to people and was interfering with the dragons. Yesterday, the dragon became the victim. The girl continued the conversation by saying that something strange and in the form of a parasite united with the dragon yesterday, but many lost children or loved ones because of people. The girl was leading to something important. However, standing with her back to our main character and his faithful servant, this girl continued saying that in any case they should remain neutral in this case and not radically interfere. The girl continued looking up somewhere and saying that these guys are blinded by anger. These parasites use extremely strong magic and attack villages with the help of the power they have captured. The goal of these little purple parasites is clear as heaven. They want to start a war between dragons and humans through such incidents of invading villages, so they need to be caught as soon as possible.